August 9th, 1981, the day when the Seafair celebration comes to its pinnacle. The day of the APBA Sea Galley Gold Cup race. At a sweltering 99 degrees, the fans along the log boom and the shoreline were hot, but the thunderboats in the pits were hotter and raring to go. Since this year's race was the Gold Cup, there were a few changes in the rules, including the controversial fan plan. The idea was to run the 6 slowest qualifying boats against each other in the A heats and the 6 fastest qualifying boats in the B heats. Then at the end of the 4 heats, the fastest of the 6 slow boats would be invited to run with the 5 fastest boats in the Gold Cup final. Many of the drivers felt the plan was not in the best interest of the sport, including a wily Bill Muncey, who qualified the Atlas at a mere 107 miles per hour. It looked as if Mr. Muncey was going to sandbag the qualifying runs in order to secure his place in the Gold Cup by working his way to the top of the slow boats. But in the final days of qualifying, Muncey ran at a more respectable speed, placing him with the faster boats, much to the delight of the fans and the relief of the officials. On race day, only 10 boats had qualified at the required 105 miles per hour for 2 laps. So in order to fill out the 12-boat ticket, 2 boats which had run at least 1 lap at 105 were invited into the A heats. They were the Miss Rented Chops, driven by mild-mannered Tom Martin, and the Miss KYYX, driven by Brenda Jones, the only woman to drive competitively in an unlimited hydroplane race. Now for the qualifiers. First, the Miss Rock KISW, driven by Bob Miller. This boat dates back to 1970 when it was originally Chrysler powered. She qualified at 105.7 miles per hour. The U-20 Captran Resort driver Bobby Howard was dismissed earlier in the week, and a member of our own King 5 broadcast team and former driver of the Miss Circus Circus, Mr. Steve Reynolds, was recruited to take over the controls. Steve qualified the Captran at 105.8 miles per hour. The U-17 Tempest, this famous backyard garage boat, was designed and built by Chuck Hickling and was qualified by Bill Muncey at 110 miles per hour. The boat would be driven in the race by veteran Bob Mashman. The U-6 Dr. Toyota, known back east as the Miss Madison, this boat is owned by 13,000 Madison, Indiana supporters and driven by Milner Irvin, who qualified at 115 miles per hour. The Oh Boy Oberto, driven by Rookie of the Year Scott Pierce, qualified at 119 miles per hour. But just 2 hours before the first heat on Sunday, the boat was dropped by the loading crane onto a finger pier. The crew worked frantically to get this wood hold patched up before race time. The U-3 Thousand Trails, driven by Jack Schaefer, qualified at 125.7 miles per hour. Formerly the Miss Budweiser, this hull was converted from a conventional to a cab-over last year, and it looked to be this year's dark horse. The Squire Shop, driven by Chip Hanauer, qualified at 125 miles per hour. The Squire had its ups and downs this season, bursting into flames after a second-place finish in Evansville, in which Hanauer narrowly escaped serious injury, to winning the Columbia Cup in Pasco just 2 weeks later. The Squire looked to be a fierce competitor. The Atlas Van Lines, owned and driven by the incomparable Bill Muncey. Muncey has won 8 Gold Cups and 3 out of the last 4 in this boat. Contrary to his displeasure with the fan plan, Muncey did finally qualify his boat at a more respectable 137.6 miles per hour. And the defending Gold Cup champion, the Miss Budweiser. In 1980, Dean Chenoweth spent Seafair Sunday in the hospital after a spectacular flip in qualifying run. This year, the Bud was back and proving that it was the boat to be reckoned with. The Bud qualified at 139 miles per hour.